You know what else they know how to do?
Good evening. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education on September 10th. And the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we have a guest to help us this evening?
We certainly do. First and foremost, we have Mr. Ian Hillman here, the principal at C.W. Shipley, and he's going to introduce our special guest today.
All right, I brought 3 pledge leaders tonight.
Oh, wow.
First, we have Moon Ho. She's a first grader at C.W. Shipley. The word I would use to describe Moon would be caring. Moon is caring to her classmates. She helps her classmates find what page they're on. She's caring by bringing the principal a birthday pencil. When it was my birthday last year. She's caring in asking me if her family could come tonight. So that was very caring. We're very proud of Moon. Our next pledge leader is Nayla Civil. The word I would use to describe Nayla is dependable. Nayla's dependable by coming to school every day. She's dependable by smiling and giving me a hug every day. She's dependable by helping her classmates, and she's dependable by giving me a piece of fruit once a month. And our third pledge leader for tonight is Colby Bassler. He's a second grader. The word I would use to describe Colby is enthusiastic. Colby is enthusiastic about everything at school. He's enthusiastic in the classroom by working so hard every day and answering questions. He's enthusiastic on the playground. If I watch him for 5 seconds, I have to sit down. And he's enthusiastic in the cafeteria. Last year when I did first grade lunch duty, I noticed that this side of the table was really loud and it was kind of like a party going on. So something's going on with this side of the table. And after a couple days, noticed that up here was kind of like that. What is it? I learned wherever Colby's sitting, that's where the party is. So Colby is, if you see him at school, you're in a good mood because he loves being at school and he puts everybody in a good mood. So I thought these 3 were great representatives for C.W. Shipley, so they're going to lead us tonight. All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
All right. A presentation of the proclamation for West Virginia School Service Personnel Day on September 21st.
Actually, for folks who may not be aware, the governor annually declares a day for our school service personnel. And I think it's actually pretty fitting that we're doing this on the day before 9/11. I think oftentimes people who are in service to others don't always recognize they're going about their work day to day with dignity and with grace, and they don't always recognize the level of influence that they have on the people in the lives around them, and you never know where that influence starts or where it's going to end. And that's true for all types of service where it's a tough world out there, and the best way for us and for our children to get through it and make a brighter future is if we teach them that serving others and relying on each other and working together is the best way for them to get through it, and to rely on each other, not on technology, not on someone else to come save them, but on each other. And I think that our school service personnel exemplify that every day. And here to honor them and to talk about the proclamation, we actually have Ms. Terry Young, who is the president of our local West Virginia School Service Personnel Association.
Thank you. For
those that don't know me, as Dr. Gibson said, I'm Terry Young, and I've been doing this for too many years. I think I'm going on like 20 years. But I do want to say, you know, the old saying is, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a lot of us to educate them. And with service as well as professional, we work together. And we help but teach all the children the pros and cons, the good and bad. And we're grateful that we have each other, both professional and service, to do that. So with this proclamation that I can never say, the governor's done this. I think this is the 4th year that this has been done. And they changed the date so it could be during the school time. But it's an honor, and we are so grateful for it. But it's not just for service personnel. I mean, this day may be for service personnel, but it's for everyone. You all, as board members, as well as the professional. We thank you, and we hope to keep this going. Thank you.
Thanks.
Madam Superintendent, any comments?
The only comments that I would have for the board and for community members is that for tomorrow there are a number of activities going on within our schools for 2 things. Number one, obviously honoring and remembrance for 9/11 and the events of 9/11 in our various schools, and as well as the United Way Day of Caring, in which several of our schools and our service organizations are volunteering their time to help improve the condition of their fellow man and their fellow citizens across the district, and we are happy to see that and happy to continue to encourage it, and anyone who wants to come and join us in schools is welcome to.
All right, thank you. Approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion on the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Citizens' comments. Oh. Did you have something? I think most of you have been here before, but just a reminder that we do limit you to 3 minutes, and just please be kind in your words. The first one up is John Doyle, and after John, we have Laurel Parker. And Mr. Doyle, if you wouldn't mind standing behind the podium, just because.
I'm happy to stay anywhere you want, Madam
Perfect.
President.
Just because the camera angle and everything, that way we can get you perfect.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. I came here not too long ago to ask you to do anything you can to help us to stop Rockwool. I'm here to ask you to do that again, and I have a specific idea to throw out for your consideration. I hope you will seriously consider pulling out of the pilot agreement. Now, the interesting thing is that I've been trying for several days to find out exactly what this would mean. I have always thought, and I've talked to several of my fellow legislators, some who were on the Finance Committee with me, some on the Education Committee, and they agree with me about this. The County Commission cannot legally sign away the portion of property taxes that goes to schools. That's about 2/3 of the money. It is my belief that if you pull out of the pilot agreement, you can then lay claim to the approximately $400,000 of that $600,000 per year, total of $6 million for 10 years, that you can lay claim to that approximately 2/3 of the money. Now, I am not a lawyer. Please check with a lawyer and find one that knows school law before you do that. But I throw that out. It's a discussion I've been having with lots of people. The reason I ask you to help save us from Rockwool is this. It's a number of years ago, and I know a couple of you may remember a lady who represented Jefferson County in the state Senate for a dozen years, Sandra Lucht. There was a controversy similar to this about 20 years ago involving a quarry, the Francis O. Day Company. And Senator Lucht said at a public meeting like this that allowing that in was akin to putting kitty litter in the living room. I think when people come across the Blue Ridge from the east. This is the first part of West Virginia they see. When you go into someone's house, usually it's the living room you go in. I like the idea now that when they crest the Blue Ridge, they see these gently rolling hills of the Shenandoah Valley. They see farmland and historic homes. I think all of West Virginia should want to keep it that way. So I ask you to help us keep this kitty litter that is Rockwool out of West Virginia's living room. Thank you.
And after Laura, we have Casey Walsh.
I have some maps. Can I get these to you? I like maps.
Thank you.
Okay. First, I'd like to say thank you. All 4 of my kids have attended Jefferson County Schools their entire public school lives and have benefited from great programs, opportunities, and great teachers. I have a few more things to add to your Why Rockwool is Bad for Jefferson County file. The first map is from WVDEP. It shows the results of soil tests done last year. There were 2 places that tested higher than West Virginia safe standards for lead, DDT, and dieldrin. They cleared and retested the DDT dieldrin site, but did nothing to the test site with really high lead levels. This site is right by the road and across the street from the elementary school. Lead travels in airborne dust. I'm not sure if they've disturbed the soil in this location yet, but this is something to keep your eye on. They're not planning on any further soil remediation. I also have additional concerns about WVDEP standards, and I don't think they go far enough to protect our kids. The next maps are of gas pipelines and karst geology in the United States. You'll see that the pipelines try to avoid karst geology. Unstable grounds cause pipelines to break. If that break is near a spark, they explode. The higher the pressure and size of the pipeline, the bigger that explosion. The last explosion in West Virginia happened in Moundsville on June 7th of this year and was a result of unstable ground, a landslide. It was a 6-month-old pipeline with a blast radius of approximately a quarter mile. This past Thursday, a break in a low-pressure pipeline caused a large fire in Harrison County, West Virginia. And this morning in Pennsylvania, there was a gas pipeline explosion that closed schools. I don't know what the pressure of the Rockwool pipeline will be, but it will be a commercial-sized line, and Rockwool is the endpoint. The last map shows Jefferson County riddled with sinkholes. This is a serious safety issue. For these reasons and all the others you've heard, please do whatever you can to stop this heavy industry. I truly appreciated it when you stood up for the teachers during the strike. What an awesome lesson you and the teachers taught our kids. Stand up for yourself and defend what is right and fair. Please continue to set that example. Please stand up for our kids, our teachers, our county, and our health. Thank you.
And after Casey, we have Erin Lennox.
I am a lifelong resident of Jefferson County. I attended Jefferson County schools and received a bachelor's degree in social work from Shepherd University. My oldest child is now in the 5th grade and has probably missed 5 days of school, and she also has asthma, so that's a pretty good attendance record for a kid with asthma. Even as the curriculum changes in some ways over the years, there are still core values that have remained the same. From the first day of kindergarten through the last day of senior year, students are told the same things over and over again. Treat others the way that you want to be treated. Bullying will not be tolerated in any way. Take care of yourselves and maintain a healthy lifestyle by not putting harmful substances into your bodies. And more recently, respect a person's personal boundaries and that no means no. Let me break this down for you. Treat others as you wish to be treated. Rockwool is not treating others the way that they want to be treated, as they are a company which is not even allowed to operate in their country because of stricter environmental regulations. Rockwool wouldn't operate at home. They are willing to build a plant in one of the poorest states in America. Classy. Take care of yourself and maintain a healthy lifestyle, and don't put harmful substances into your body. How can you teach children about the importance of health and safety and then put a high-polluting factory right across the street from an elementary school? You might as well go back to the days where teachers were surrounded by clouds of cigarette smoke in the teacher's lounge. Respect personal boundaries. No means no. This is our home. These are our children, and their schools are a place that they are supposed to feel safe. Instead, we have a company who, after being asked to leave or at the very least pause construction, says no. Bullying will not be tolerated. This is a perfect example of a bully with no respect for boundaries. Please explain to me how we expect our children to learn and live by these examples of good character, along with honesty and good citizenship, when we are allowing Rockwool to break the rules over and over again. Please practice what we're preaching. Please back out of the pilot agreement. Rockwool needs expelled.
And after Aaron, we have Sean Amos.
Board members, my name is Aaron Lennox. I've been a resident of Jefferson County for around 20 years on and off. Currently live outside of Scrabble with my wife and 3-year-old son, where we bought our first house last year. I know you've heard a lot of big numbers regarding Rockwool emissions: 239 tons of nitrogen oxides per year, 67 tons of formaldehyde, etc., etc. I'd like to try to put these numbers into perspective regarding particulate matter 2.5, using something we can all relate to: motor vehicles. The DMV reports for fiscal year 2016 state that there were 42,183 licensed drivers in Jefferson County, West Virginia. The EPA reports state the average PM 2.5 emissions for a passenger vehicle are 0.11 of a pound per year. Rockwool is permitted to release 134 tons per year of particulate matter 2.5, or 268,000 pounds. In other words, every licensed driver in Jefferson County would have to drive for 58 years to equal the 268,000 pounds of particulate matter that Rockwool is permitted to release in just 1 year. 15 years ago, West Virginia legislature passed House Bill 2961 in an effort to reduce emissions from idling school buses outside of schools. Jefferson and Berkeley counties both voluntarily retrofitted their school buses to reduce emissions. School buses generate more particulate matter than cars, approximately 5,600 of a pound per year. Why bother reducing emissions from buses when you will have the equivalent of 478,571 school buses idling 24/7 across the street from North Jefferson Elementary School? Thank you.
And after Sean, we have Ruth Hatcher.
And if you,
Thank you.
Good evening, board. Thank you for allowing us to speak again. Before you turn too many pages, I want to explain what you have in front of you. This is actually a letter from the doctor who is in charge of the health department of the Halton region, which is the county, in essence, where Milton is. So this is sort of like Jefferson County for Milton. It's their doctor who is sending a letter. What's going on is the Rockwool plant in Milton has applied to open a second production line. And so the man here is writing a letter to the state level, it's the province level, to the Ontario Ministry of the Environment. Sort of like the West Virginia DEP, as it were. So they've applied for a permit. The man who's in charge of the region's health, the doctor, is writing them a letter and saying, here's why this is not a good idea. Now, this was in 2007. You'll see this there. It's highlighted for you. Turn the page. The next little highlighted bit says that Roxul is a significant emitter of sulfur dioxide. And in 2006, they emitted 365 tons of sulfur dioxide. Just keep that number in mind, 365 tons. This doctor is saying that that's what they emitted. Go ahead and turn the page. In the next highlighted bit, you'll see while air levels of sulfur dioxide predicted will be well below the Ministry of Environment criterion, and this is sort of like what Rockwell is telling you now. What we're doing is going to be well below the West Virginia DEP, right? And they kept saying that last week, right? They're saying even though it's going to be below those levels, if you drop down there, the air levels will exceed WHO guidelines in almost 6 locations in Milton, 20% of the time. This is in Milton. This isn't 35 miles away or wherever it's going to dissipate, or Loudoun County where it's going to magically disappear before it gets there. This is right at the site. This is the doctor who is saying that this is what will happen. Go ahead and turn the page. The next little highlighted bit, you see there what they're talking about, what the health effects of that would be. And then at the bottom, I want you to remember 2 weeks ago that those people that were in here lying to you said they've never had a health complaint about any of their factories. Conclusion, the Roxul facility has a significant impact on air quality in northern Milton. It is currently a significant contributor of air emissions in the community. Go ahead and turn the page. It is expected that air levels will exceed WHO guidelines in neighborhoods in Milton about 20% of the time. So this is in 2007 that they're saying this, okay? The health department is saying to the state, don't let them do this, it's going to be bad for the kids. And there's his signature, the doctor who's the Commissioner and Medical Officer of Health. That was in 2006, right? 2007, sorry. So now then, go to the next paper. This is 10 years later. This is from the government of Canada. So they have looked at this thing and they have said, this is what it's going to be like. If you turn over here where it's highlighted, right there is that 365 number, what they were emitting in 2007. I want you to look what Rockwell did. Look at the numbers. They increased their sulfur dioxide by 311%, in spite of the fact that the health department told them that it was going to make kids sick in Milton, even though it's below those standards. This is what they were lying to you about last week. I know my 3 minutes is up. Thank you so much. I want you to know they're lying to you.
Ruth Hatcher, and after her, David Tabb.
Thank you for listening. I'm going to pick up where Sean left. I spoke with the surgeon last week at my gym. The week before, I handed him a sheet so he had time to look at the information. So he was on his treadmill, and I stopped him. I said, did you get a chance to read my paper? And he said that he was alarmed. And he said we already had enough problems with diabetes and opiate issues, and that this would be a tragedy for our citizens. So I have talked to the executive offices at the hospital in Martinsburg, and I'm waiting to hear back. And tobacco, asbestos, and Big Pharma all told us there would be no problems, but we know that's not true, and especially in our state with the opioid use. Also, we learn more from our mistakes than successes. Be example to our children and the community and get out of this Rockwell mess. Why is this proposed plant so close to our schools? A new school would not be allowed to be built in such close proximity. Vote no to any infrastructure supporting Rockwell plant, and please pull out of the pilot agreement, as Mr. John Doyle has said. Another question, how will insurance premiums be impacted by heavy industrial plant, Rockwell, in our county? How about your school system premiums? How about your school employee premiums? How about the residents' health and homeowner premiums? How are they going to be impacted? This is considered a smokestack industry. We're going to pay for this. in many ways. Yes to the Corporation of Harpers Ferry statement and call to action to oppose Rockwool. I believe that that letter should be on your website. Yes to the guidelines on the use of perfumes and scented products that you guys have out there. I'm very proud of that because I personally had a very serious problem with breathing with perfumes. I had to go to the emergency room because someone walked by me and I had to have oxygen. So I personally know that and I appreciate that. That's very, very important. So based upon that, you are fully aware of the problems that people have with breathing. So based upon that, it says that chemical-based scented products which may be physically harmful to those with allergies, environmental sensitivity, or chronic heart and lung disease. So you know this. There's a problem right here. Yes to Senator Manchin speaking with our students about drug prevention and destructive decisions. Preventing addiction is the best place for the government to invest because treating the illness is so expensive. So you're going to have to treat all these kids and us and we get sick. So that's a huge cost. It's illegal to sell tobacco products to anyone under 18 years old because of the known carcinogens and other toxins. Say no to Rockwool's emissions containing known carcinogens and other toxins. 27 million cigarettes a day coming from the smokestack, right? Yes to EPA's brownfield success story of Charlestown and Ranson. Yes to American Public University System, to the Ranson Civic Center, and to green space. No to Rockwool and possible future brownfields, the contaminated properties. We've already been down that road once. We should know and learn a lesson from that. Yes to be in Apple Valley. No to Chemical Valley number 2. No to Rockwool. Thank you. I didn't make multiple copies, but there's 3 other copies.
And after Mr. Tabb, we have Jane King.
David Tabb, Jefferson County resident. I've been paying taxes in this county for 59 years. I'm 63. At 4 years old, I owned property in this county. That's a lot of taxes for a long time. I was paying for schools before I went there. Just think about that for a second. And now you're going to put all these other people in harm's way. Our superintendent, Ms. Gibson, was behind closed doors before the public was let in at the Roxville meeting on Saturday. I don't remember what day it was. But yet she asked me, Mr. Tabb, if there's anything you need, let me know. So I'm asking. I want the disclosure agreement. That's what I want. Because that's where it started. The DEP, along with the EPA, which they claim they don't, but I have it in writing that they are actually guided by the EPA, is a common deal of having non-disclosure agreements. And then they turn around and don't tell you anything. So if you say you don't have anything, you violated it. And if you do say you have anything, you violated it. So how could we even have any hearings when all of you were forced non-disclosure agreements down your throat? Now, part of y'all didn't sign that or didn't agree to it. And I think you ought to stand up and say, I'm not involved in it. This is all very sad. As the one lady said, what's your health plan going to be? Well, my constructive thoughts of 150 jobs coming into the county to produce pollution so we can build a new hospital on the property that's already set aside and water and sewer and everything's to it, so that we can have 3,000 new jobs taking care of all the people we just made sick. Now that makes a whole lot of sense, and I can tell you who the biggest part of them is going to be. It's going to be our kids. Now, if you don't think that I will stand up and fight for something, these kids are something that I will do. I am a grandfather and a father, and I'm also I'm a son. And for almost 400 years, my family in this country has sacrificed Anybody else want to stand up to that? Because I will. This is wrong. It's been wrong all the way through. And I need your support. Thank you.
And after Jane, we have Anastasia Tab.
Okay, so sorry, the audio isn't great on this, but in front of you is the transcript from the audio clips I'm going to play from the City of Ransom Planning Commission meeting on July 10th, 2017, where they conspire against the public to make zoning changes before we can object it.
This project's over, and it's not bad. I don't think this room is going to be empty. I think you're going to have people that are against the natural gas line coming in here. And you're going to have people that are very concerned about the environmental air permit. The more openings that there is to discretion, I think the more opportunity there is for a challenge. I would like, if we're going to do this, you know what's the difference between 90 and 120 when it comes down to it on a district that's only to itself. So we increase that by right. There is no discretion anymore. The site plan comes in, the building permit, we check the box, and we go on with life. Otherwise, they're going to be looking, frankly, at me saying discretion, and I'll have the public here saying, well, what gives you the, why should you be the one to decide? And frankly, I'm willing to take that position. Why? We're here doing a customizable SDI thing. They need 120. Do 120. It shows a good faith compromise, frankly, if we have to go to them and say, you know what, we don't like your fence, it sucks. So we compromised here, so you don't have to go through a discretionary waiver process, but work with us on another topic. Just think the more stuff that's done by right opens us up to less bickering. So I really don't think this is a bad news. I don't think it's going to be Ransom residents that are here. I think it's going to be, this room is not going to be empty moving forward.
No, I agree with you. It's just anytime someone says a deviation or an administrative deviation, the perception is that we made some sort of concession to them when we don't really have to.
This food section is already opened up. Now, it just really stirs me when this came out. I can't tell you, whether it's a church, golf course, or whatever. What's the environmental impact? What are they emitting? What are they producing? How high are they going to be? Is there going to be black smoke coming out? I mean, so if we can just put down that stuff. So I would recommend increasing our right.
That's all. Sorry for the bad audio. That was their recording.
Anastasia Tab.
Hello. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to continue to listen to us. Due to my own fault, I have only been actively participating in this Rockwell situation over the past 45 days. And quickly within that time, 11,000 people have become involved socially and more beyond in communities. Within my family, my daughter graduated from the Jefferson County school system and my son is currently enrolled. So your involvement in this project has direct impact on my family. I had voiced concern over the Board of Education's participation in the pilot, and I understand we must be patient while exploring future participation, and I hope you are seeking special counsel because this is no ordinary situation. As a community member, I would like to express my total disapproval of the Rockwell project continuing. Otherwise, I believe there are currently many unanswered questions surrounding this project. And some of these concerns, I hope that some immediate action can be taken to delay the construction progress. I don't know if Rockwool has clarified their position at all to you in regards to the 3 requests for them to stop work. I don't know if there's been any assurances with the soil remediation that we've expressed concerns about. The air quality monitors should be installed as soon as possible so we can establish baselines and know if there's anything currently that we should be concerned about. There's too many afterthoughts now that don't ensure to protect our happiness and quality of life, and I hope that you can be a saving grace to this wonderful county of West Virginia. Thank you.
That's all of them. Thank you very much. All right. Consent agenda.
No changes, ma'am.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. All right. I did notice one thing on the superintendent approvals.
Yes, ma'am.
Number 15 and number 1 are duplicates of each other.
Okay, my apologies. Thank you.
So do we have a motion to remove number 1?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of removing number 1? All right. And then okay, so now we need a motion and a second on the amended consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now we go to unfinished business. And we have on here Rockwool discussion. Rockwool came and made a presentation at our last board meeting. And this is our opportunity to discuss it if we have anything that we choose to discuss. Anybody?
Well, I'll start it off. I think it's rather disgusting that they have not furnished information that they had promised to us on several occasions. We have not heard from them on any of those. They apparently do not seem to care whether we like it or not. And so I think that's going to probably have a negative effect on how folks perceive them and perceive their veracity. So it's something we're going to have to keep on looking at and dig into more to find out exactly what the answer is. But so far the answers have been negative, and that doesn't get it.
Have we had any response to the human risk report?
That is a very good question. I sent them a follow-up email after their presentation. I sent an email last week saying that we had not received any. Number one, just as a reminder, this board made 4 repeated written public requests, which Rockwool in theory, responded to during their presentation. We requested a human health risk assessment. We requested that it be done exclusively and explicitly on children using their respiration rates, their size, their developmental levels, and that it include not just the emissions, but the process in build and in transportation and raw materials. We asked that human health risk assessment, that the provider be selected through a public selection process that included citizens of Jefferson County so that there would be some level of trust in what was provided. And finally, and very strongly, requested that there be a moratorium on all buildings so that should something come forth from that human health risk assessment that could be done to mitigate some level of risk, that they would not have already built past that point or already invested to a point where they were unwilling to invest in that. While Rockwool stated that they agreed to the human health risk assessment, they have agreed to none of the other three conditions. So I followed up with Leslie McLaren, who is their public relations person, in an email last week and said, we haven't heard anything further about this human health risk assessment, and we need a liaison. We need someone to both speak with and find out which portions of this you are going to agree to and which ones you're not. We've heard clearly on the ones that you're not. We need to know what this is going to constitute and what you're considering, and we need a liaison to speak with. And I didn't hear back from them. I emailed them again today, and I got a response today with 2 names within the Rockwool organization. Their vice president for North American operations, who was to be my contact for the human health risk assessment, but that came in this afternoon after my second request, and that is all of the information that we've received from them after repeated requests.
And we also asked them for 2 additional pieces of information. One was a list of environmental mishaps that have taken place in the past 30 years, and they agreed to get that to us. And also we asked for clarity on any road changes, and we haven't gotten that either.
No, ma'am.
So
I will send them written reminders of those as well.
Where do we stand on our other legal obligations? Do we have any clarity whatsoever going forward?
We have, per, as many of the folks here noted, this is we have a number of obligations. Our first and foremost obligation is to our children, to run our schools and to make sure whatever decisions this board makes, once this board, it is one thing to have the will of the board, but it's my responsibility to make sure that the board has all of the tools that they need to successfully execute what it is that they want and they think is the right thing to do. So having said that, the size and scope of this case has presented some rather spectacular difficulties over the last 2 weeks. We've been engaged with a total of 7 separate law firms, all of whom have, well, the first 7 have said, I'm getting there, I'm getting to 8 and 9. The first 7 have refused to be engaged in this process, either because they are conflicted out, meaning that because of the number of different entities that are involved in this case, they represent, or someone in their large firm represents one of the other organizations and they have an inherent conflict, or because of the complexities and the potential size of the case, they feel like they have an insufficient legal basis within their firm, either because it's too small or it's not their bailiwick, to be able to do that. Moving to numbers 8 and 9, both of whom have run conflict checks and have declared themselves to be capable of representing this board and be free of conflicts. Both of them expressed some reservations about the size and scope of the request and have asked to be able to review documents and submit a proposal to us about whether or not they felt that they were capable of representing the board in such a matter. They have both committed to sending me some. Both of them have different dates this week by which close of business they will be able to present to me whether or not they feel they're capable of representing us.
Is it possible for them to, I hope they're local, are they from Jefferson County?
No, ma'am.
They're not?
No, ma'am.
Well, I was hoping that we could have someone, a lawyer or a law mind from Jefferson County sort of be our surrogate and have that person like look for that larger firm that would be able to handle this, but someone who could look out for our interests as a resident of Jefferson County. Would that be possible? Because we might have to go to DC and get like an environmental company or,
And certainly I think one of the issues is that we have spoken with local attorneys, and all of the local attorneys that we've spoken to have been either they don't have expertise in this field and feel like they can't represent us, or they are conflicted out because they are already representing some other, as you know, there's a number of entities involved. They do have to be licensed in the state of West Virginia, and once again, I think their first and foremost priority needs to be that they are free of conflict to represent this board 100% with no other obligations, and that's what we're seeking.
I guess my statement is that there may be someone local that's not large enough to do it themselves, but could be our representative with a larger firm, because they'll have the legal knowledge, but they can also look out for our interests, as opposed to just going to DC and getting a large firm who's not conflicted out, but they don't have any relationship here in Jefferson County. I guess it would be just like if we had a local, an attorney on staff, and that attorney will go out and find a larger company who could represent us in this matter.
And
we've exhausted that list. I mean,
everybody in Jefferson County?
Pretty much. I
My
mean,
issue with that would be this, just thinking on the other side of it. Number one, although I get what you're saying, that makes sense in some ways. I also don't want anybody who lives in this county, frankly, is going to have an opinion one way or the other. Even as an attorney, that we want them to represent us, right? But then you'd also want to say, I also don't want there to be an issue where if it comes down and we take this stance, that person somehow is, because they live 2 miles down the road, somebody can say, oh, well, they must feel this way about it because they live 2 miles down the road. Number one. Number two, I don't want to use taxpayer money to pay 2 attorneys when we can do what we need to do with 1 attorney who knows and is well versed in environmental law, in pilot agreement law, in whatever it is that we need to find to be able to make those decisions. Those would be the only 2 thoughts
And
in
school
thinking
law.
that. And I think it's also important to point out, and for those of you who have not lived in the state of West Virginia for that long or for long enough, or just didn't, you haven't really paid attention to lawyers. I know I didn't until we kind of got involved in all of these things years ago. But as far as school law goes in the state of West Virginia, you basically have Bowles Rice and Steptoe & Johnson. I mean, those are the 2 firms that if you go to, like where we will go to Charleston this week to do school board, all the school boards in the state come and we have our annual conference. Traditionally, you can ask all of those folks, and they use one of those 2 firms because those are the ones that are well-versed in school law in the state of West Virginia. Bowles Rice traditionally charges a lot more than Steptoe & Johnson. Our Steptoe & Johnson we've had for a long time, well before Rockwell ever entered the picture. That person who's dealt with us never has anything to do with this land thing over here. Rockwell comes in, they go to buy a piece of land. They're, of course, going to look for one of the 2 big firms in the state of West Virginia, which is Steptoe & Johnson or Bowles Rice. So they choose a Steptoe & Johnson attorney. Well, then all of a sudden it looks like, oh, well, now we can't use our attorney because they work for the same company, even though we had the attorney first. Now we can't even use that company. And then when the pilot agreement was written, whether it was the JCGA or the county commission, I honestly am not sure, somebody then solicited them to then write, to Bowles Rice, meaning to write the pilot agreement, which would be, again, the other large firm, which makes sense because when you're involved in anything with the school system, you know if you have to do anything in regards to law, pretty much you're going to pick one of those two firms because they're well versed in so many different avenues. Right or wrong, that's kind of how all this has progressed and why I think it is right now we're having some issues with trying to find somebody who is willing to take this on.
I mean, if you know of a lawyer that you're
Hey, don't beat around the bush.
Well, I mean, but if you have a problem with someone living in the county and representing us.
All I'm saying is I just don't want to be, I want this to be done and done right. I don't want there to be anything else. And again, if they're willing to help us out and be a liaison, like how much do they want to get paid full price and then we're paying somebody else over here full price? And, you know, like that's not, I don't think that's good use of our taxpayer dollars either. So I kind of want to, I guess we need to know. If you know of somebody, yes, please put that person out to Dr. Gibson. And
Their main role would be to protect our interests, which would mean our financial interests also. But I do think it's worth a try.
Sure, I think it's always worth an ask.
But trust me, we have asked a lot in the Eastern Panhandle. That's where the search started, and it kind of spiraled out from there. In their presentation, they said that they would do the human health risk assessment based on the data that they had. And one of the parameters that we set that is extremely important is based on children. Because if you have a study, and let's say that study is a group of 100 people, just to make it the numbers easy, and let's say 10 of them are children, and let's say it says, okay, you have a 5% chance of an adverse effect, whether it's cancer, asthma, whatever it might be. That number could be 50% of the children, since they're the smaller individuals, the smaller masses. And so unless they agree to base it solely on children, where 100 of those 100 people are children, the numbers are going to be very skewed. So you might look at it and say, okay, 10% is not bad, but it might come back and be, 50% on children. I mean, that's the scope of what we asked for. I don't think is unreasonable. And at this point, it's incredibly disappointing, the timing of their response. It's very similar to a year ago where Mr. Reisenweber came on September 11th and made a presentation, and the board asked for additional information. On September 23rd, which was a Saturday, we still had not gotten any response to the questions that were outstanding. The morning of September 25th, the day of the board meeting, is when they provided that spreadsheet of the 3 columns where this is the tax money you're getting on farmland, this is the tax money you'll collect with the pilot program, and this is the tax money that you would collect without the pilot program. The fact that they waited until 1 or 3 o'clock or whatever it was this afternoon to even provide a contact person is, in my mind, kind of dragging their feet. We asked for the moratorium while the study was done, and they pretty much said no when they were here last time. So at this point, since we've gotten a pretty unsatisfactory response, in my mind, I would direct Dr. Gibson to seek legal counsel to pursue what our options are at this point with the pilot agreement, and in addition to the pilot agreement, what our options are to protect the safety of our students, since that's one of our biggest responsibilities is student safety.
You want a motion for that?
I guess I'm asking for a motion for that, and then we could have discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
I think it's pretty direct.
Well,
If we need the information, we have to know how to move forward.
I mean, they're moving forward, so at this point, I think we need to move forward. And
I agree.
I think this board has shown an enormous amount of restraint and thoughtfulness, as they always have in difficult situations where they've tried to get all of the information and be careful stewards and good decision makers. And as long as everyone's an honest broker, you guys are always willing to listen. And at this point, I hear you very loudly and clearly. And I think everyone does.
all right, so we have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. And that's the conclusion of our Rockwool discussion this evening. You are more than welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting. However, I'm expecting a mass exodus at this point.
Thank you. You guys are awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Think about the kids. We're happy. Thank you.
I want to be clear about that.
Got it.
I left a copy of the goals by your place. Did you get those? Okay. Did you have any changes or
Make that all encompassing.
Substance report. And this is,
Do you think small like we're not focusing on the ones that aren't achieving? That's part of what
we're constantly focusing on that, though.
Right, so somehow we can say that in addition to the normal standards of low achieving, we want to focus, put a special focus.
That's welcome to the board meeting.
I'm also so excited just to
Thank you.
want to be more a part of everybody's process.
We have a straggler.
We love it.
Oh.
Me too. Thank you for staying.
you can come up front and get the full blast if you like.
Okay. So, number 11, new business. Action item A, action on approval of superintendent's goals for evaluation for 2018-19 school year. And you each have a handout of those. Dr. Gibson, I think you have the abbreviated version. Ours is 1 through 50. I believe yours is just 1 through 5. Is that correct?
Right.
All right. Number 1 is passage of a bond for current infrastructure needs and future growth. Number 2 is restructure of central office to address additional program needs and efficiency, including succession planning and cross-training. Number 3, in addition to focusing on all of our children, we need additional organization and focus on high-achieving students with focus on gifted identification, criteria for honors, and increased dual enrollment. Number 4, expansion of leadership training to include assistant principals at elementary, principal training, and succession planning. And number 5, address high school guidance structure, purpose, duties for student support, including supervision of high school guidance and adherence to JCS initiatives. Do we have a motion on the superintendent's goals?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. Discussion? Questions, concerns? Thoughts?
No, ma'am. Again, I think
Reasonableness?
these are, like anything else, what I will do is we turn these goals in, and then I will work on submitting to you some measures for which you could, because some of these are, focusing on high achieving students is always a goal, but what will constitute in your mind success, or at least progress in that arena, looking at different data points that I can provide you.
Well, one example of that is the dual enrollment program, where we really started focusing on it last year, and so we'll have a couple years of growth and data to give us some more information.
Certainly, some of those are easier than others too.
Right. I mean, I don't think any of these are a surprise or anything like that. I mean, these are kind of things that we talked about in our retreat.
Yes, ma'am. All of them.
Excellent.
I had sent you an email related to number 3, and I think that we could use it maybe as a benchmark about the number and percentage of ethnically diverse students who are in the National Honor Society in both high schools, application and acceptance.
I can certainly make that one of the measures.
All right.
I only have one reservation. These are all important goals. My primary concern is whether this is too much. I mean, this, some of you are going to do, it's going to get done anyway, one way or the other, for whatever reason. Some of it is going to mean extra work. And what I'm concerned with is that you don't get overloaded, so it causes you problems.
Thank you, sir. Well, and I certainly don't want to make you promises that I can't keep, because then it just erodes your trust in me and your trust in the staff. Do I think that I will take every one of these out to the nth degree? No. I mean, will I triple the number of students identified as gifted, or will I completely restructure the central office in a year? No, sir. But I think if the board is willing, and we've had this discussion, the ones of these that are large, sort of like the restructuring of central office, that is a large multi-year goal. And as long as there's a recognition of, here are the things that I'm doing to make progress towards that, and if this is sufficiently bold enough for you, tell me. If it's not, then as I'm going through it and bringing things to you and parts of it, I trust you enough to give me feedback to say, okay, you started. There's a difference between running a leadership program for APs that includes a series of classes or certification programs versus, well, I did a 1-2 hour session on, do you want to be an AP, and so I can check this goal off my list. I think this board has a pretty reasonable idea of what we can accomplish within a year's time. So I think I would fear this much if I feared this board, if I didn't trust this board's integrity and their understanding of the system and the level of communication that I have with you. You're going to know every week, here are the things that I'm doing towards this. I'm either making progress or I'm not, and I trust you enough. You won't wait until the end of the year to tell me if I'm not moving fast enough or getting enough done. So, but thank you for asking.
And they're goals, not, requirements. And some of these, I mean, like number 1, the bond, that's not a you goal. That's a everybody goal. Right.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
And number 2, I thought we were thinking that would help with all the rest of your goals.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. That's a great point.
And number 3, I know to increase dual enrollment, we've already asked the administrators that they can put that class at their school.
Right. Early first period.
And we know we're going to increase that.
In August, right?
That's right.
All right. Okay, so all in favor of the superintendent's goals? Aye. Opposed? All right. 11B, approval to place on review Jefferson County Schools prescription and over-the-counter medication policy.
11B is word for word from the State Department. It is part of policy 4336, which is directly written for us for bus drivers only. This is a bus driver reporting system. Basically, we're saying that you have to tell us, what drugs that you were taking, even if they're over the counter, even if as long as they're on the list. There's a list, it'll be page, we use a state list provided, it's page 20 of the medication restriction list. It's a 20-page medicine restriction list. And all those have been given to our bus drivers so they know what they have to do. The only thing we added to the policy at all is the consequences at the back. And on the consequences at the back, we took it to our lawyer and to JLT, and both said we needed to add or termination on the first and the second one, giving us ability to terminate for failure to report the first offense or the second offense. We'd have that ability. You also have the ability not to, but you can bring it up to that point if you need to. At the bottom, the recommendation is for termination, and those were set out by the state. That's the state's words and regulations on there. So basically, we're just putting this out for review. This is not for approval tonight. It's for review. It's going out for review, and then it will be back. The draft was in August of the year. We've been working at it. We've taken it to the lawyers. We've looked at it in many different directions, trying to be as fair to everybody as we possibly can, yet at the same time making it as safe as we possibly can for our children. We don't want anybody driving our bus that has any kind of possibility of being unsafe.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? Second? All right.
I have a question. We have, 100 and some bus drivers.
Yes.
Through the course of a year, we also okay car drivers, fathers, daughters, whatever, of that. Should these recommendations also apply to them? We can get just as much problem. We stand to have as many problems there, accidents, as we do with buses, probably more.
If I understand you correctly, if you're referring to the car drivers where we have parents who come in and they get approved, they are not our employees. So we do run background checks. If someone volunteers to be a car driver, like, hey, I'll help drive the cheerleading team over to Wheeling for this trip, we do, for the safety of mind of the parents, we run a license check on them and we run a background check on them to make sure that they don't show up in the Raptor system. And that's for the safety of our students. We do not, if let's say a parent took some cold medicine and they weren't sure how it was going to affect them, and we'd have no way of knowing that. And quite frankly, then we have the point of this is that we have responsibility for our employees, and if they do something, the power that we then have is to affect their employment and affect their paycheck. Other than removing a parent from the approved car driver list, if they do something inappropriate, there wouldn't be any other, they wouldn't fall under this policy. There's just no venue for that. We do background check them and we do license check them, but all of these things are after the fact. With bus driver, we would never ask a parent, tell us every medication that you're on before you go on this field trip this one time. Whereas bus drivers, if they are prescribed a medication and it could have any effect on their health, their ability to maintain the safety of our students, they are legally required to notify us. If they fail to, and we find out afterwards, then that's a disciplinary offense because they put our children at risk.
Well, I was just thinking whether, I know what you're speaking of, but I didn't know whether we are under any obligation, or not obligation, but any danger of suit if a carload of kids has an accident and it happens to be that driver's problem, whether we have any what do you call it?
Liability?
Liability. If we have any liability in that.
Our liability lies in whether or not we did our due diligence. And under West Virginia Code, our due diligence, and actually we go above and beyond. We not only check their license, we check the Raptor system, which that's not a requirement, but we do. It is a requirement for insurance purposes that we check their license, and we do both of those. We check their license, insurance, and we run them through the Raptor system. So we've done all of the due diligence that we can to make sure, again, for every one of those parents as well, it's their individual choice about whether or not they trust another parent to drive their child. That's, we just add that, we just give the added safety of if you want to drive on a trip, then you know that for this person, we've at least checked their background, their license, they're not on the sex offender registry or have a conviction for something.
We also get the vehicle information too, the
we do.
registration, inspection,
we do.
And insurance and all that. I did have a question when I was reading this. If we took this verbatim from the state, because it said the employees who operate county vehicles, but then 2 paragraphs down it says the applicability, this policy applies to bus drivers. What about our maintenance truck drivers and our couriers?
That's a great point. It applies to anyone who is our employee and driving one of our vehicles while they're, let's say, Ralph, or I'll use myself. Let's say that I was taking a new asthma medication and I got into the county car and drove it and had an accident and drove in, hurt someone. It would be applicable under this policy.
Right, so we just need clarification there because in the first paragraph, the last sentence says employees who operate county vehicles, which includes bus operators transporting students. But then in the third paragraph under applicability, it says that this policy applies to bus operators. So it should be all
Jefferson County Schools employees, right, and the commission of their duties, and that would cover all of those.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
I just had one question. Do you know, Ralph, do we use one specific doctor right now to do all of our
Yes.
clearances?
We use one specific doctor that we pay for. However, you can pay for your own doctor to do your physical.
Although I will say this, you don't have the option. We also, and folks may not know this, we also randomly drug test our bus drivers, and that is non-optional. We have an outside agency that pulls the names on a random basis, and you have 24 hours to report. If you fail to report, it's a termination offense unless you...
And actually, the new company we've been working with actually is going to pull them right off the bus. UE. Boom.
West Virginia has some of the most stringent regulations in the country for bus drivers.
All right. So, all in favor to place on review the prescription and over-the-counter medication policy?
So moved.
Do we have a motion? Aye. Opposed? All right. Action on approval for a personal care one-on-one aid for a CTMS PMI room.
Yes, I'm looking for the recommendation, the approval of the personal care aide for Charlestown Middle. This position will be covered by a personal care aide in the system that a student has moved out of town. That was actually in Charlestown Middle. So it's Charlestown Middle to Charlestown Middle. I have included on the bottom under your content the details.
So this is not going to be a new position at all?
No, this is not.
Just a new student.
It's a different student. It's actually the student has MS and is actually getting worse, and at this time needs more additional support. We started tracking at the end of last year.
Do we have a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
She had to sit a long time for that.
Okay.
And we do not have an executive session this evening, is that correct?
Yes, we do.
Oh, we do?
Yes.
Okay.
When you see the man we've got on.
I thought he was just here, because he loved being here.
Pleasure of listening to another meeting.
I'm sorry?
Could we make comments?
Drive home late in the rain again.
Excuse me one moment. Ms. Roper has a comment.
Oh, yes, I do have a comment. I just wanted to remind everyone that we have a great program in Jefferson County Schools, 4-H program, and this is the initial time that they get started. And they're having a big come out and see what we're all about event October the 7th, and I'm gonna leave this information with Penny, but this is 4-H is a fourth grade through high school program, the best program I've seen in the area as far as teaching business and leadership and team building and all of those things. So I just wanted to get that in the minutes, my comment.
All right, thank you.
I would like to thank Miss Janet for attempting to get the tax exempt things done for Marriott this week. We have not made it through yet, but it's a good attempt. Because I filled out a bunch of them.
What was that?
The tax exempt forms, Gary. She's got them in her packet.
Make sure you take it with you.
Was there anything from Epic? Because I missed the last Epic meeting.
No, sir.
Yeah, oh, Richard.
Okay, and what time is that? It's the 7th, which is a Sunday, at what
Yes,
time?
2 to 4.
Got it.
Please, take some.
So do we have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.